So as I was saying, here you're lucky, you only have two parties, and you still have plenty of sinat, right? This guy he doesn't know what he's talking about, and he's this, and they dig up all the dirt on everyone they can. Everyone loves everyone, right? That's what politics is all about. Why? Because by definition, what has come to be considered normal political life in the Western world is made up of different groups and different interests all fighting each other. So everyone you can't possibly say anything positive about the guy who belongs to the wrong group, the other side. Now think about Israel, think about 30 parties, then you understand that it's that much worse. And this is what we had, not only what we have today, that's what we had way back then, 2,200 years ago also. The Jewish people were split, were fractured within. There was constant infighting, politics all the time, and it was all about control. Even though some people certainly, even though certainly some people had good intentions, perhaps wanted to be in control, so they would do the right thing, not the wrong thing. Nevertheless, the Jewish people as a whole were caught in this political morass. And when you have politics and parties, you automatically end up with hatred, with sinat chinam, for the very reason that we explained. And therefore, Shabtai ben Dov opens our eyes and allows us to understand what this sinat chinam was all about. It was about the Jewish people not being who they're supposed to be, not being motivated to do the things for which the Jewish people were brought into existence. As a body politic, they were not informed by this great vision that Hashem had for them, and so they fell into this political morass that we described before. And that, of course, leads to sinat chinam. That leads to inner divisions, lack of unity. And when a nation is divided against itself, fractured from within, without any great vision and purpose ahead of it, it's lost, it has no hope. And that's a problem the Jewish people had 2,200 years ago, and that's also a problem that the Jewish people have today. And not only the Jewish people suffer from this problem. I'm not an American citizen, but if I may express an opinion, I think America also doesn't know where it's going, doesn't have any kind of a vision. That's true of the Western world in general today. The Western world is directionless. And that's why it really doesn't know what to do, where it wants to go, doesn't know how to fight its enemies, it's unsure of itself. This is a well-known phenomenon. It happens. It happens repeatedly throughout history. So, having understood a bit more about what was going on at that time, based on those two statements in the Gemara, the Talmud, and Masechet Yoma, we understand that the entire period of the second Bet Mikdash, the second Commonwealth of the Jewish people, was actually one great missed opportunity. The Jewish people had the opportunity to return en masse and to build something great and strong and powerful and beautiful, which is their purpose and destiny, and they didn't do it. They were incapable, and this lack of capacity, this lack of functionality, one could almost say, that the Jewish people exhibited was there, but it's in something intangible. No one could put a finger on it and say, the problem is this is the problem, or that thing over there is wrong. It's a general malaise which sort of paralyzes the nation. Now, I've mentioned a couple of times the purpose of the Jewish people. So, in other words, why this is a missed opportunity. So we have to speak now for a moment about what is the purpose of the Jewish people. In fact, do they have a purpose? Is there such a thing at all? Does the Torah state such a thing? Well, here I can tell you a little story. A story which happens to be true, which is nice. It's better than stories that aren't true. A lot of the stories you hear, you know, Hasidic stories and these sorts of things, they never really happen. They're nice stories, they have a point, but they never happen. But I'm telling you it happened because I was there. I know it happened with me. And it happened only a few years ago. I was in Melbourne, in Australia, a few years ago, and I happened to be invited to a certain home for Shabbat, for lunch. And this home, the household has a certain connection to Chabad, to Lubavitch, and that's true for the grandfather, who's the Baal Habayit. But he also had over some of his grandchildren, and they're already real hardcore Chabad, all right? And it happened to be Parashat Yithro. And they asked me to say about Torah. So I started talking about one of the Pesukim of Parashat Yithro. That Pasuk states, it's in Perek Yud Tet, chapter 19, Sefer Shemot. Wa'atem, I'll say it in real Hebrew first, okay? And then I'll translate into less real, and then I'll translate into less real, until you all understand, okay? It says in real Hebrew, it says, Wa'atem ti'u mamlechet kohanim v'roy chadosh. In regular Israeli Hebrew, that's V'atem ti'u mamlechet kohanim v'roy kadosh. Now, if you want it in Ashkenaz, I'll do that also. V'atem ti'u mamlechet kohanim v'roy kadosh. How's that? Does that work? Everyone got it now? What does that pasuk mean, first of all? Simple translation, open up any English Bible. It'll tell you, and you shall be a kingdom of priests, you shall be for me, a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. So I explained to the people around the table that once upon a time, the only kind of political entity that was known was a kingdom. In other words, a political entity which was ruled by a king or an emperor, correct? And therefore the Torah is speaking about a mamlacha, which comes from the word melech, which means king, the kingdom. But we know at the present time, in human affairs, that's not the case. Today we have all kinds of political entities. There are some kingdoms, not that many. You have all kinds of other states, what we call a state in modern parlance, what is called modern Hebrew Medina. Medina is a state, even though in the Tanakh it's not. The word Medina in the Tanakh means a large city, usually a walled city, like in Megillat Esther, right? Sheva or Esrim or Medina. Medina refers to a capital city or a regional capital, a large, major town. Just to illustrate this point, to show you to what extent the word melucha or mamlacha means a kingdom, but on the one hand it also means what we understand in modern terms to be a state. I'll mention the following fact, that at the time of the creation of the State of Israel, there was a daily Yiddish newspaper. I think there no longer is, but there was for many years after that as well. I think it's defunct. There was a daily Yiddish newspaper, and on the day of the declaration of the State of Israel, the headline read, Yiddish Melucha, which means a Jewish state. That's what it means. In other words, the word for state in Yiddish was Melucha, right? There was no other state. The word Medina was not, they hadn't heard of that word yet, really. Just to show you that what we call a state, they refer to as a Melucha or a Mamlacha. So I was explaining to these people, when the Torah says a Mamlacha, it means a state, what we call a state. So when the Torah says, "V'atem ti'u mamlechet kohanim v'roy kadosh," it means you are to, your purpose in the world. This is being said to us, by the way, just before we receive the Torah. Hashem is telling us, just so you should know why I'm giving this Torah to you, what it's all about. I want you to be li, for my purpose. Atem ti'u li mamlechet kohanim, a state, a nation state that establishes itself in its land as a sovereign national entity of Kohanim. The word Kohanim can be understood as priests or special people. The word Kohanim, Kohen, appears in the Tanakh in a couple of other places where it means someone who's not a priest but a special kind of person. So Mamlechet Kohanim means a unique kind of a state, not your average kind of state like any other nation can establish, and a Goy Kadosh, a holy nation. And therefore I said to the people around the table, we see here, therefore, in this week's parasha, that it is a positive commandment, a miswa min ha-Torah, to establish a state in the land of Israel. That's what it's telling you. If you're supposed to be a mamlacha, that means you have to set up a state. You can't be a mamlechet kani if you're not a state. You don't have such a state. And if you haven't got one, you have to do it. You have to make it happen. So therefore, the Torah is telling us this is something that you need to do, and this is actually the foundation stone of Torah Judaism. That's what it's all about. The whole purpose of this giving of the Torah, bringing you out of Mitzrayim, giving you the Torah, is so that you will become this kind of a nation. Immediately, this Baal Bayit, he had one of his grandsons there, 18, 19, 20-year-old yeshiva bocha Chabadnik, and he said to me, he said, wait a minute, I've never heard that before, that there's a commandment in the Torah to have a state. No one ever said that to me. Where did you get that from? Well, I said, I just explained to you. It just says in the Pasuk, you know, it's right there. He said, but I didn't understand it that way. So I asked him, well, okay, tell me how you understood it. I never actually got the answer to that question, but that's what I had. That's what I told them, and that's what I'm telling you. That is the purpose of the Jewish nation. The Jewish nation had this mission that it was given at Har Sinai to be a Mamlechet Kohanim V'Gol Kadosh. And its first attempt, the first Commonwealth, the first Mikdash, etc. Again, there were brief episodes, brief periods when things were going better, but overall, it wasn't a great success. So much so that eventually it was destroyed. Jews went into exile, into Galuth, and then we got a second chance. When the Persian emperor said all Jews who want to return may do so. And we know that they didn't really, as we said, they didn't step up to the plate. They were past the ball, as it were, just before the touchdown line, and they didn't run with it. They dropped the ball. And that entire period of the second Mikdash, the second temple period, is one great dropping of the ball, really. And if there was any time during that period of several centuries when you might have thought that, well, surely now the Jews will actually motivate themselves and see that what an amazing opportunity presents itself to them, that time would have been at the time of Hanukkah, the events of Hanukkah. Because, as I mentioned earlier, this was the first time in 4 centuries that the Jews had actually gone to war with anybody at all. And frankly, I don't know how many people, I wasn't there, but if I can put myself in their shoes for a moment, I don't know how many people really thought they were going to succeed. What they really thought was, what Matityahu thought when those Greek troops came to his town of Modi'in, as is described in Sefer Maccabim, thanks to those monks that we know about. What is described there is that these Greek soldiers, a contingent of Greek soldiers and officers came to the town to enforce the government decree that all Jews have to, in the town square, the most important person in the town, the leader of the town, has to perform a sacrifice, a korban, to Greek gods. And Matityahu, being the head of an important priestly clan in Modi'in, was asked to do the honors, so to speak, and he refused, which right there tells you a lot about Matityahu. He was an old man also, and he refused. He could have been put to death on the spot, and they probably intended to do so 10 minutes later, but they wanted to get the business done first. They wanted the korban done, so they turned to someone else, and he agreed. They probably bribed him or told him, it's worth your while, or what have you. And it's a great pity about those children of yours. Some terrible things might happen to them if you refuse. That sort of tactic often works. So this other guy said, I'll do it. And as is described in Sefer Maccabim, when this other Jew stepped up to do the deed, Matityahu grabbed the sword from one of the Greek officers and killed that traitorous Jew, and shouted out, Mila Hashem Elai, whoever is for Hashem, follow me.